Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I have got a world-class legend today. There's no question. He needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway, just to make sure you know how good he is. Shally Steckerl is a friend. He's been that way for many years, and he almost invented, probably did invent, what we refer to now as sourcing, talent sourcing, how to find candidates. Nothing happens in recruiting until you find great candidates. And Shally has made a career, a mastery of this craft. And it is part art, part science. Let me tell you briefly about Shally. He's president of the Sourcing Institute and Sourcing Institute Foundation. We'll touch on those later. He teaches this. He's written books about this. He's got online courses on this. And he works with companies. He's worked with Microsoft and Google and Coke and Motorola, so many others, on sourcing. So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about what is working now in sourcing and what's going to work in 2019 in sourcing, because let's be honest, at 3.7% unemployment, not easy to find great candidates. So Shally, with that setup, welcome to the show.
Wow. Great setup. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm still your friend.
I'm super pumped to have you on because
awesome.
Since the last time we spoke and had you on, it's gotten even harder to find great candidates.
Yes, it has.
And that's not about to change anytime soon. So let's maybe just give some color, if you can, or some metrics on how hard it has become compared to, say, 2-3 years ago.
Good question.
Does it take you 10 times longer to find candidates? Do you have to find 10 times as many candidates? Do you have to look in 10 times more places? Give us a day in the life.
Yeah, I'd say using those comparisons that you just gave, I have to work 7 times harder to reach them.
Wow.
That's a big part of the challenge and what's different. Finding them has gotten, in some ways, a little easier,
right?
And in some ways, a lot harder.
Easier because of the online tools that are now available?
Right. Easier because there are a lot of resources now. Venture capitalists are beginning to recognize the value that our business has, and companies are beginning to recognize the value that sourcing brings to an organization. So software tools are being written and invented and developed for us,
yep,
which enable us to do our job faster and more efficiently. But at the same time, the noise has grown and the availability of people has increased. So in other words, the size of the data pool is bigger.
There's more signal, but there's more noise too.
Exactly. Everything's been amplified. So what's challenging now is drilling into the volume and picking out just the ones that are really good matches, and then having the intestinal fortitude and perseverance to continue reaching out to them until they respond.
Is that what you meant when you said 7 times? Were you referring, you have to make 7 times as many outreaches to engage people?
That's right.
And do you suppose that's because there's so many opportunities competing for their time, or they're just too busy, or email bounce rates? Why do you think that is?
There's 2 primary reasons that I can very easily point to. There's a bunch of others that are underlying, but the 2 big obvious ones are they're getting a lot more messages. So their inbox is filling up with a lot of trash from unprofessionals and from unsolicited spam, not just in recruiting, not just as a job seeker, but just in general. They're getting a lot more communication. So there's a lot more coming in. And when it is recruitment related, it's not necessarily any better. A lot of the junior people coming into the industry aren't taught, like they never really were.
Yeah.
There's never been a lot of strong training in our industry.
Sure.
And I say that even though that's a big part of what I do for a living.
Right.
There just isn't a lot of investment in that. So these rookies are just sending out, spam emails. I have a job, apply now.
Yeah.
So not only are the candidates getting a lot more noise, but they're also getting a lot more noisy recruiting.
Yeah.
And then the other component of that is that people are learning to tune things out. When you get a telemarketing call on your cell phone, you just ignore it.
Sure.
You send it to spam. You don't answer your cell phone unless you recognize the number.
Sure.
Or you get a text message. You don't respond to email the first time you get it. So we've got to reach out to candidates 3, 4, 5 times and in multiple ways. email them, text them, call them, for them to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is legit. It's not spam. It's
so
not.
let's drill into that outreach since you're on that, and we can back into where to find people. So is it okay to text candidates now? Is that permissible? I don't mean legally, but can you do that, or should you not do that unless you have a pre-existing relationship?
Well, I am not an attorney, nor do I even play one on TV, but I can tell you that legally, from my experience or from my layman's non-attorney point of view, you can reach out to people through text messaging. There's nothing illegal about sending a text message. What becomes illegal is continuing to send text messages after someone has asked you to stop.
Got it.
And also to add them to a mailing list or texting list or whatever without their permission.
Right.
But if you have a mobile number on a resume or a profile and you send them a single text message that says, I've been trying to reach you via email or whatever, that is permissible and allowable. They obviously have the right to say, hey, don't contact me here anymore.
Right.
But it's becoming what email used to be back when people started putting emails on their resumes, remember?
I remember. It seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, and they'd be like, wait, why are you emailing me? Well,
what are you finding in terms of engagement rate with text? So if you email me versus you text me, any measurement or guess on what kind of response you get?
The response time is very fast. So what you'll notice is if they're going to respond very quickly, within hours.
Yeah.
I would even say minutes sometimes. I mean, the text responses are very, very quick. As far as will they respond, the percentage of that is upwards of 80%, 80 to 90% of the time they will respond.
80% on text.
Yep.
And what would you guess on email? I mean, it's a fraction, obviously.
I would say that people who know how to do it and communicate effectively and have personalized emails and have professional outreach should be able to easily get 30 or 40% responses. If you have multiple attempts and you are a strong writer, good subject lines, you should be able to get 50, 60%. And that's after multiple attempts, not just from a single email. Yeah.
Right. And obviously a lot of those replies may be, no, I'm not interested, but thanks.
That's a reply. Yep.
Right. Got it. So email and text, what else is working, or do you anticipate will continue working for the foreseeable future? InMail on LinkedIn is another big one. Is that trending in the right direction or the wrong direction?
Wrong direction.
Yeah, I've seen the same. But for listeners that may not know, why do you think it's heading in that way?
The noise. There are a lot of unsolicited commercial emails that are being sent through the LinkedIn network, and they're doing everything they can to fight that. Yeah. That is common to every platform. Look, when your first fax machine got plugged in at your office and you got so excited that you got a fax and you're like, wow, this is awesome. I don't even have to print something out. I can get it in my fax machine. How long was it before you got one of those vacation fax spams?
Yeah, didn't take long.
It didn't take long. So every time there's a new technology, there's always someone that's out there that's going to try and figure out a way to use it for commercial purposes. And it's not necessarily in the most professional way. Yep. So people are spamming InMails. And they're getting caught and kicked out all the time. But then there's also recruiters that are just using bad communication. Yep. So the other part of it is the reduction in responses because people are simply just disconnecting their InMail from their email. Right. So they are choosing not to have
so the push notification is not on.
Yep.
Got it.
Which means now that as a candidate or as a recruiter, we see them as candidates. Themselves, they don't see them as candidates. They just see themselves as regular people, right? Right. But as a user of LinkedIn, you have now turned off notifications. So in order for you to get the message from a recruiter, you have to log in and go to the notifications area or go to your inbox, which is done less frequently.
Sure. You can barely keep up with it these days. Yep. What else is working, or what is trending in the right direction that you're willing to share?
Texting is trending in the right direction. It's becoming, texting is.
Texting.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more acceptable. Yep. There still is a little bit of stigma, as you originally raised an issue of suspicion around, is this legitimate? Should I be doing it? There's less question about that. It's much more part of a person's plan. People used to have to pay to text.
Yep.
Now it's almost, it would be almost utility. Ridiculous. Right. Yep. It would be ridiculous. Just like email used to be. Remember when we had to pay $9 a month to get
I do.
Yeah. So people had to pay $9 a month for a texting plan. Now it's free. So it's becoming more acceptable. It's no longer a matter of, hey, wait a minute, you're sending me a message and I got to pay for it. Now it's free. So all I'm objecting to is simply the interruption and the time and space. So the objections are fading quickly. And then also Facebook messages and Twitter messages, but it depends
on the decline,
on the increase,
on the increase in terms of effectiveness, or there's too many?
Effectiveness.
Facebook and Twitter.
Facebook and Twitter. So Twitter, especially good for people that are in technology, technical roles,
sure,
software developers, programmers, those kinds of people that are product managers, etc. They tend to spend a little bit more time on Twitter than the average. And I'm using a little bit of a generalization here, but good results with that. And Facebook in general, yeah, go ahead.
I'm surprised you haven't experienced that people consider it past the line when it comes to Facebook, an invasion of privacy.
No, because it's a message like an email, right? So you're not doing anything in their public. You're not leaving any kind of a trace on their public wall. It's a private message,
right?
And it's usually done through what I recommend doing it. What I do is using my mobile phone, not the Facebook desktop version.
And tell the audience why that is.
The Facebook Messenger app is more trusted, and because you're on your mobile phone, it is more secure. So the Facebook infrastructure security team has good reason to trust that, if you've got a cell phone plan and you're connecting through a known node, which is, connected to a tower,
it's
really
less likely to be crap.
It's hard to fake it. It's hard to be a spammer.
Right.
It's possible, but you'd have to buy a burner phone, know how to do that, and set up a fake account and do it before you get caught, because they're very good at catching you at that.
Yeah.
So when you send a message through Messenger on your phone, Facebook trusts it. When you send it through your computer, they don't trust it as much because it's so much easier to spam and spoof desktop accounts. So messages on Facebook are going to their inbox, and it's just simply like a text. Hey, I found you on LinkedIn. I sent you a message. You probably never received it, so I figured I would reach out here. Yeah, and what I do when I send those messages is at the end, I have a little link to my online business card. Mm-hmm. You can do this through many places like card.com or .co actually, or About Me. So when they click on it, they can see a landing page that has my Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all this other stuff. So they don't have to respond.
They can check you out.
Right. And they can leave Facebook if they want to. Now, if they don't want to use Facebook to communicate with me, that's fine. They can click on this link and then they can see I'm on LinkedIn, or they can email me, or they can text me. And that response is acceptable because they're now leaving the privacy of the Facebook network.
They are in charge of deciding the way they want to communicate. Yep.
Exactly.
Is 2019 the year that we finally flip the funnel from proactively going out and finding people to finding ways for companies and recruiters to engage them to us based on a compelling employee brand proposition and message? In other words, becoming much more like CRM, where we're building relationships ongoing with candidates as it should be, and then engaging them at the right time versus going out and finding them one at a time at the time that we need them. So just-in-time hiring versus pipeline. Is there any indication this is finally going to happen, or we're not there yet?
Recruiting, honestly, is a lagging market, not a leading market. In other words, there are other professional areas where there are much more investments in technology to use.
Marketing and advertising of products.
That's a very good example, right? So until we get to the point where there is no more need for salespeople, then I can't tell you that it's going to come to recruiting before it happens there.
Yep.
So to this day, and I'm in the short, future in the next few years, yes, there's a migration towards creating a presence and having some more of that automated. When you come to our website, we'll talk to you.
Yep.
In recruiting, there are starting to be some companies, 2 or 3 companies that are creating products that are lead nurturing, that capture you when you come to the website, as opposed to try to force you to go to the website. They're drip marketing and nurturing your relationship with that brand. It's just like in sales, just like when you go to the website and you do something, then they remember that you did that. And next time they invite you to come back and do something similar.
Right.
Same thing is going to happen, but the transition isn't happening in sales professionally. So it's not going to happen in recruiting anytime soon. And the other part of this is you got to remember that the type of candidates that are really, really critical to an organization, they don't always look for work.
Yeah. They go from one to the next because they're called.
They know who to call when they need to find a job.
Yeah.
If they're starting to look for another opportunity, they're going to reach out to their network. So they're not going to go jumping around and looking at websites. There's always going to be this need to identify them and be part of the network that they reach out to.
Are there clues or breadcrumbs or tells that a candidate isn't actively looking, but is starting to think about it? How can we be attuned to those signals that, hey, Charlie or Chris or Christine are unhappy this week and they might be thinking about a change?
It's funny you asked that. Yeah, you definitely can tell, when it's happening through things like you start seeing that they've picked up their activity on social media. They started, posting on their LinkedIn. They updated their LinkedIn profile. They added some, new articles or blog posts, and, have all of a sudden been spending more time on LinkedIn than they did before. And likewise, they're, participating a little bit more on Twitter, et cetera. So their social, your radar is pinging, social activity. All of a sudden, when it's changed,
there's a correlation.
That's a good indication. Yeah. But it's not always a direct correlation, and you can't just make the assumptions. So I think it would be a good idea to cautiously approach someone and say, hey, just in case you might be looking.
Got it.
I thought maybe I would get in touch with you, rather than saying, oh, I noticed that your LinkedIn profile recently changed.
That's too presumptive. Are there any other signals other than updating or more social media activity?
Depending on the industry, there are some. So for example, in technology, 2 years is a pretty good mark. Mm-hmm. Someone that's been at a company for 2 years is starting to put their feelers out.
Right.
It just, again, presumptive.
Statistically.
But statistically, the 2 to 3 year mark is kind of that. Now, once they've been there for 5 years, then they tend to stay a little bit longer.
Yeah. It's almost bimodal, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like this spot between 2 and 3, when if they do leave, it's then.
Yeah. Otherwise, they may be
past 7.
Yeah.
They're either beginning or they're going to wait until the company gets bought or whatever. Yeah.
So to that end, let's look at the other extreme. Let's say someone took a job in the past 8 weeks. What are the odds that they say, oh shit, I've made a mistake, and they are receptive? Is that even worth spending time on, or is that so unusual that someone will make a change again that quickly?
Unfortunately, it's not that unusual.
So people will make a change that quickly.
It's not common, but it's not unusual. I have had conversations, and they've happened serendipitously, by the way, not through any sort of design. Oh, hey, you just started 90 days ago. Maybe it's time to start looking at. No, but it's just been a matter of, I will email someone that was in my pipeline 6 months ago, and I didn't know that they just recently started a new job. They're just in my pipeline, and I've been working them and sending them messages. And all of a sudden I send them a message and they go, I just started a new job, but I'm not liking it here. I think I made a mistake. Right. And it's like 30 days in or 60 days in, and they're responding to my email because they made a mistake, or the company made a mistake hiring them.
Right. Or something has changed, right? They got a different manager than they expected or whatever.
Yep. So I've had conversations like, well, they told me it was going to be this, this, and this, but when I got here, all of a sudden, like you said, the manager changed, or the environment changed, and now it's too late for me to go back. So
it was a bait and switch.
Yep. And it may not be intentional. I'm not trying to say everybody's
right.
nefarious.
Shally, you're the master of this stuff, partially because you've been doing it for a while, so you know what works, what doesn't work. Tell us about the Sourcing Institute, how people can learn more, get access to some of your courses and training, et cetera.
The easiest way to get involved is to buy the book, The Sourcing Method, because it's $35. There's an online version.
Yep.
So you can buy it electronically or in print. It is a very easy read, 300 pages, reads like a novel, but it is all, I promise you, nonfiction and very actionable. And the reason it's called The Sourcing Method is basically, after 22 years of doing this, what I was able to do with this book that I couldn't do with my past 2 books is I put everything, with the help of a co-author who was one of our apprentices and is now one of our top consultants. I was able to put everything into a very easy to follow method that is from beginning to end. Here are the steps. And that's different because before it was a lot about technique and methodology, but this is actually more of a start here, do this and this, and this is how you
it's
know
more
you're
of a
doing it
system.
right. Much more of a system that you can easily put together, and you can be a complete rookie and be able to follow. So that's a good point. Then our website has information on a number of courses, certificates, and diplomas, and that's tsi-corp.com, tsi-corp.com.
The Sourcing Institute.
Exactly, the Sourcing Institute, tsi-corp.com.
Yep.
And then the third thing that I would say is get involved with our foundation. We have a 501c3 private operating foundation.
Which is fantastic, by the way. Tell people about that.
Thank you. Yeah, the sourcingfoundation.org. It's sourcingfoundation.org. And what we do is our charter is threefold. The first part of that is to provide the grants and scholarships means to make it possible for people in displaced situations, particularly focusing on the blind, deaf, visually impaired, and hearing impaired communities, as well as returning active military that are transitioning to civilian, and spouses, military spouses. These are populations that have very high unemployment. It's particularly the blind. They have 80% involuntary unemployment. That means 80% of them are interested and actively looking, but cannot get employed. And it's not because of lack of skill. We hire them as sourcers.
Right.
And military spouses have similar challenges in that they have to disclose that they might be moving in a year or so, and employers just simply don't want to take the chance. But with sourcing, you can do it from anywhere. You don't have to be in a particular physical location. So we make it possible for them to learn our business and get into recruiting and sourcing. And the second charter is we work with the International Standards Organization, the ISO, in helping forward the standards for sourcing and recruiting, and putting to the World Committee of there's 37 participating countries, a standard for what sourcing should be. So taking the sourcing method and putting it into an actual international standard. So that's the second charter foundation has. And the third one is to improve the inclusion recruiting in academic programs.
I love it.
Teaching recruiting in HR schools.
When I said
contacted today, right before I got this, I was on my email, and I just got an email from a university that's buying the sourcing method as their textbook to teach a recruiting class.
Fantastic.
So it's definitely, you can't say you don't go to school to be a recruiter anymore.
Now
you do.
Say it now.
Yeah, like 12 people can say it, but it's better than zero, right?
Well, congratulations. And thank you so much for making the time. You are a legend in the industry, and I appreciate you sharing with us what's working these days and what's likely to work or not work in 2019. So thank you so much.
Again, it's an honor to be here. Appreciate it. Thank you.